All right, so I want to talk a little bit about conspiracies, conspiracy theories. All right, all that fun. So, by definition, a conspiracy is when two or more people get together and they plan something, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be nefarious or evil or anything along those lines. Like if I call up my friend and I say, hey, you want to hang out later? He says, yeah, let's hang out later. We just conspired to hang out. Okay, and now, the word theory, right? You form a theory about something, and then you check to see if it is correct, right? Based off of whatever evidence you have gleaned. It doesn't necessarily have to be accurate. All right, but the term conspiracy theory was set up by the CIA after the assassination of JFK in order to discourage and discredit people who were questioning the official narrative. All right, and the official narrative in that particular event was definitely questionable. All right, so now to understand like CIA involvement, you have to understand Operation Mockingbird. And that was basically the intelligence agencies within the United States set up individuals who were going to influence and have a sway over media. All right, now ever since the internet, there's kind of been a loosening of that because private individuals are able to produce and get more influence than the media. And you can see how much they despise that with their smears of said individuals, right? You can see Joe Rogan. There's dozens of people who just wait for a single opportunity to try and smear his name, right? So, you have many individuals who work within media, and that's why it seems like all of them are talking the same points continually. You can switch to the channels, and they all have basically the same thing to say. And more importantly, is the things that they don't say, right? Because if you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you're able to control this, and by proxy, you're able to control the population, right? And now, obviously, you have a lot of that within social media and all of these different sites, the technocracies that we see infringing on our ability to communicate, right? You can take algorithms, you can harness that, and you can direct people in whatever direction you desire. And this is a whole nother level of danger. And now people are able to communicate more and more. And you're able to see a lot more skewed perspective, right? Things are able to be framed, right? Because you can have bots, and you assume that each of these bots is a person. And so you assume that there are more people who believe this particular narrative. Doesn't matter what it is. You have the illusion of numbers, right? It could be a very, very small minority of people who are being incredibly vocal, and it seems like a wave, and it gives you a misconception of the true amount, right? Not to mention the echo chambers that are created, and you have middlemen that control information. And in an age of information, the person that controls it, they have quite a bit of power, right? And they definitely all work together. We saw that with the Gab, or what was it? Whatever site that was, they got pulled from the Amazon, and then everybody got kicked off at the same time. They do great purges all in sequence, right? Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Now, the previous president of the United States is not allowed on these sites, but apparently the Taliban's available on Twitter. All right, but back to the whole conspiracy concept. All right, there are a lot of people conspiring continually, all the time. There are many, many conspiracy theories that turned out to be entirely accurate, right? The Tuskegee experiment was a conspiracy theory, and they were injecting black men with syphilis, right? The MK Ultra, that was all a conspiracy theory until it was released and turned out that it was true, right? Where they're working on prisoners and mental patients, trying to do mind control experiments, just doing torturous things to these individuals who are some of the more helpless in society, right? Because they are dependent on the system that they are confined in. Right. Now, we also know that there have been a lot of lies told about recent events. Like anybody that's my age, I'm 30, we live in the shadow of 9/11, right? Because I was 10 years old when the towers fell, and we watched it in school. It was a constant talking point. So like our perspective on America was very different than people who were growing up in years before, right? And then you grow older and you realize that there were a lot of very questionable things, and the narrative that was presented is definitely not what transpired, right? And we can go into all of those reasons, but that would also take some time. Like, if you believe the official narrative on 9/11, more power to you. But it's probably because you haven't actually researched it yourself to look at all of the discrepancies. All right. Now, where I feel a lot of conspiracy theorists get it wrong is that they speak in absolute terms. They think that they know specifically what has happened, what will happen, and this, that, and the third. And that is kind of foolish. You do have to take yourself out. You can't think about things emotionally. You can't allow things like confirmation bias to skew your perspective. Now, it is not a conspiracy that there are government agencies continually watching us and streaming through vast amounts of information. And they have a profile on every single individual, right, who has some type of internet presence, right? And part of this profile is they can examine everything that you do interacting with other individuals online, right? Even if you do not have a Facebook, your phone number is saved in your friend's phone who has a Facebook. So they have information on you. They can build an entire profile on you based off of the people that you interact with, right? This is Big Brother. This is 1984, right? We have very, very limited privacy, just in general. All right. Now, our freedoms have continually been eroded. Our dollar has been depreciated, right? It has no actual backing. Now the United States is a laughing stock in the world because we cannot seem to get along with each other enough to figure out who's screwing us over. And now a large portion of that is the information that is funneled to the vast swaths of the population, right? They consume this propaganda and it eats away at their brain like maggots, right? It's a very, very sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in, right? And people who speak out against it, they lose their jobs. They get deemed conspiracy theorists and crackpots and terrorists, right? It is deplorable, all in all, when you are living in a society that discourages free thinking. And that's what the demonizing of conspiracy theorists is. Now, I understand that there are schizophrenics out there who are rambling on about doppelgangers and all this other fun stuff that doesn't necessarily make a whole hell of a lot of sense, right? Now you have flat earthers and all this other fun. And a large portion of that comes from people who are realizing that they were being deceived, right? If you can't trust the arbiters of information, right, be it the media or your school or history in itself, right? As Voltaire said, history is a pack of lies agreed upon. So, like, once you realize that there is this mass deception going on all around you, you can't help but question everything. And so a lot of people find themselves in a very paranoid state, not knowing what is true, what is false, and you just basically lose a grasp of what reality is, right? It becomes more subjective and more subjective. You kind of get this cult type mentality, and you see that within people who espouse many conspiracies, right? It's just the whole joke with the tin hat wearing, you know. But there are plenty of conspiracy theories that are propagated by the mainstream media and are espoused by average people who do not realize that they are conspiracy theorists or that they're following them, right? You have the cult-like ideologies of communism, right, and the socialist dystopia that's going to be created, right? You have this whole critical race theory, the BLM cults, right? You have the cults of gender. You have all of these different things, like, because there's something deep within humans where that we need that societal affirmation, right? You need to find your tribe, right? And so you end up falling into this category, this cult, and you start to think like those people, right? We are social creatures. And once this goes on for a long enough time, you see many different sects, different groups of people that live in completely different realities, right? It's not real. Like, yo, this is all a joke. Like, you look at what is transpiring right now, and it is designed to break your spirit, right? It doesn't make sense if you're looking at it from a logical standpoint. All of these rules, all of these mandates, all of these restrictions, right? It doesn't make sense when you listen to the words that they say. When you pull yourself out and you look at it from the third perspective, from the outside looking in, you can see the farce for what it is, right? But that doesn't happen without questioning. That doesn't happen without examining what is true, what is reality, taking on multiple perspectives, right? Now, it is the genius that is able to entertain a concept or an idea like fully without being consumed by it, without believing it, right? You can see something as false, but you can still try to find the rationality within it without necessarily believing it, right? It's like there's a duality to existence, right? And there's reasons why people believe the things that they believe. Right now, there definitely is a mass amount of indoctrination. There's a mass amount of propaganda. You could dispute that the majority of the population, or at least 20% of it, is under a state of hypnosis, right? Because it is relatively easy to hypnotize up to 20% of the population, and it's damn near impossible to hypnotize another 20%, right? So the 60 in the middle, they're kind of debatable. And then you wonder why TV is called programming, right? That old cliche. The but you are supposed to watch the news in the evening, right? After you eat, after a long day's work, when you're in a state of lethargy, right? You're tired, you're exhausted, you're full, and then you sit there and you click on the TV, and now you enter into a state of hypnosis, right? And what does the TV tell you? The TV tells you to be afraid, right? If it bleeds, it leads. It tells you how scary the world is. Now you just want to stay at home. Just trust the floating heads on the TV. Everything's going to be okay. You're sick, there's a drug for that. The majority of the world is actually suffering from a pharmaceutical deficiency, right? Now, you want to get into the specifics of it, that's for another time. Just in general, it definitely appears that there is a cabal of people, right, that are getting together and they are playing games that involve the entire world, right? And they have very specific agendas that they are not too shy about expressing, right, all around, because they understand the level of involvement most people have, and it's very minimal, right? And then the people who do actually care enough to figure out what is going on, their level of influence is minimal, and they are able to do very, very little in the way of stopping this. All right, now, that is the hard part for people to understand. It is very difficult for good to understand evil. It is very easy for evil to understand good. Okay? Now, that being said, people who are in the way of evil have quite a few advantages, right? Because they are willing to do a broad array of things that good people are unwilling to do. They will break the rules. They will do things of questionable morality. They will discard their pawns, right? Things that good people have a very difficult time doing, or even conceptualizing, right? A normal person does not understand a psychopath, but a high functioning psychopath understands people. Okay, they make a hobby of learning to manipulate, learning how to activate emotional triggers, right? Understanding psychology, understanding motivations, right? This is what predators do. Okay, the majority of people are grazers, right? They're just out in the field, they're eating, not worried about a damn thing. Like, a deer cares about eating. It sees a predator, it runs away. The only thing that it has to do is be alert, and it needs to dip. Now, a predator needs to learn how to hunt. They need to learn to be sneaky. They need to know where the wind is going, right? They need to know timing. They need to spring forward. They need to be able to discern which is the weaker, which is the stronger, right? Now, predators also have to worry about other predators, right? They can distinguish the difference between ones that they can conquer and ones that can conquer them, right? Even within their own species. Now, I'm not saying you need to make a study of psychopaths or sociopaths, but you definitely do need to be aware of their existence and understand certain red flags, right? The people who lack the empathy, people who lack compassion, right? They don't know remorse. They are capable of doing whatever is required to further their agenda. And that agenda is something that is probably beyond your understanding. All right? That's the thing about greed, is that it is blind, right? It is all consuming. Right? So you have a greedy psychopath. It's never enough. They want the whole world, and they want everything in it. And they would do anything, in order to obtain it. Okay? Now, what's that expression? Real recognizes real, right? Okay, so you create a society that breeds and elevates people of sociopathic inclinations, right? And then you establish secret societies on every facet of